The following is an exclusive presentation of Jessup Broadcasting, the sports leader in Southeast Georgia.
World famous. The world famous Butch and Bob Show.
And good morning to you. You're listening to the Big Dog, WIFO, 105.5 FM in Jessup. World famous Butch and Bob Show for this Thursday morning. It is the second day of April, 7:59. WIFO FM in Jessup, 105.5 FM Big Dog Country. It's now time for the world famous Butch and Bob Show, brought to you by Nips Car Wash, located on Highway 301 South, just past McDonald's, there on the left-hand side, and by Murphy Builder Supply, located in downtown Jessup, right there down from the Big Red Caboose on Northeast Broad Street. Good morning, Bob. Good morning. I know you want to get started with our interview with Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan. Go ahead.
Yeah, we just appreciate the Lieutenant Governor being on the air with us today. Mr. Duncan, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
We're doing great. I appreciate you calling in, especially after the big news yesterday. Governor Brian Kemp announced the shelter in place taking effect this Friday. All schools closed for the remainder of the school year. So just give us your thoughts on that and, you know, where the state of Georgia is with this pandemic virus.
Yeah, so I want to continue to just thank Governor Kemp and his team for their leadership through this. We've been extremely close, and he's been just great to communicate to us and us continuing to work together. Look, there's no textbook on the shelf that you can pull off and just open it up and say, what do you do during a pandemic? But just being transparent and communicating and making the tough decisions, I think are going to continue to allow us to put 11 million Georgians in the best possible position to push through this. And yesterday was another series of steps, and we'll find out more today. I know that the governor was message that we were going to have a different strategy, slightly more ratcheted up strategy. We'll find out those details today.
What do you say to the critics to say is a little bit too late? You know, they're saying that Kemp said Wednesday just learned about the transmission of the virus by people who exhibit no symptoms, but they state that was been known for several weeks. So how do you...
Yeah, I think his follow-up question was in that press conference was he was able to really clearly answer that question. But, look, let's think about where we've been for the last 10-plus days. We've sheltered in place the medically fragile, which are making up the lion's share of the data that we're watching, those that are adversely affected in critical condition, and unfortunately the largest part of the statistics with mortality. We continue to put on display social distancing all throughout every community. Every person was supposed to not be within 6 feet in a public setting in a gathering larger than 10. And you know what? I'm so proud of the millions and millions and millions of Georgians that took that seriously and really put that on display all across every community, including mine. And so now this is an opportunity to tighten that a little bit more, make sure that we eliminate or minimize unintended consequences of gatherings that could potentially spread this. Look, our goal here is to flatten this curve and to solve two crises, right? We've got a health crisis with COVID-19, and we're working with scientists and doctors and professionals to try to figure out that. But the unintended consequence of that is an economic crisis. It's really unemployment's going to continue to climb. Every small business, every community, every household is affected. And so we got to make sure we deal with the health crisis, but we also want to make sure that we don't create unintended consequences around the economic side of this.
We've got a pretty good listening audience, so stress again what's the main point that the state wants to get to all the people out there listening that are not doing the social distancing. Is that the most important thing to do?
We've got to get the attention. I mean, every single person counts. I mean, when you look at Dougherty County, I think they were able to break that down to like really one specific event really was the flare-up moment, at least in the early looking at that. Every single person counts. Every single action counts. Dr. Ben Watson, who's a senator and represents Savannah, has been an extremely good friend of ours in the Lieutenant Governor's office and also to the Governor's Corona Task Force team. He said, look, even if you're not infected, walk around as though you think you're infected because you'll make better decisions. You won't reach out and grab somebody's hand. You won't sneeze out in kind of in the open air. You won't try to get in the car and drive up to a movie theater or a crowded spot. So that's what we've got to take this new mindset. Look, this is not easy. This isn't fun. It's disruptive. It's nerve-wracking. But this is something that our generation's calling on us to step up to the plate. And I'm proud of millions of Georgians who are doing it, and we're going to continue to do it. And we're we're going to get through this, and we will get back on track. But in the meantime, we got to take care of business.
And just joining us, Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan on the phone with us on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show. We had this discussion yesterday. Maybe you can clarify, what's the difference between a essential and non-essential business? We have a lot of small business owners like hairdressers, barbershops, massage clinics, whatever. I mean, it's essential to them because that's their livelihood. So who makes that distinction? Who decides what's essential and non-essential?
Yeah, so I think there, and I'll have to get clarity on this today, but I believe that there's lists that are out there. There's a federal list of essential businesses that are in there. These are like pharmacies and the grocery stores, things of that nature. I think the state has a list that maybe has some nuances to it, and then the locals. I can definitely look for more information, but I will tell you that Senator Blake Tillery, I'll get with him and make sure that he's able to get to y'all a list of those essentials once they're published out there. And look, it's hard. I get it. If I've been a small business owner my entire life, and and certainly there's effects to all of this. And the federal government is really working hard to put a stimulus package in place that touches the pockets of everybody, so that they can make that next rent payment, so they can put that next meal on the table. Certainly, we've got a president paying attention to that, and these are unbelievable times, and they're going to take unbelievable decisions.
I don't think anybody's got the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway because this is the question I hear more and more every day. When does this end? When do we get back to a normal life? Anybody have an answer to that?
Yeah, that'd probably be a pretty valuable answer if somebody had it. Look, the science and the data is going to tell us what to do, and that's what we got to pay attention to. My encouragement to every elected official and every decision maker is to pay attention to the data and to the science and to the providers to keep us informed as to how we make good quality decisions going forward. Governor alluded to yesterday that it looks like the peak in the state of Georgia could be right around April 23rd, which was a little bit later than what was hoped for initially, which then, because of exponential growth and statistics and all this complicated math stuff, makes it more patients are going to get it, more critical patients will be brought to the hospitals, and therefore it'll put more stress on the system. That was really the big push to kind of continue to ratchet down yesterday. My hope is that we can get through this in weeks and not months, but I think we're going to have to prepare like every other family for an extended time to make sure we do the right thing.
Do you feel the state of Georgia is prepared for this peak? You look at these other states and they keep saying they don't have the testing, they don't have the facilities, they don't have the ventilators. What about the state of Georgia? Is the state of Georgia prepared for their peak?
Well, I'm confident in the plan we have in place to prepare for the peak as we climb to it. It's not like you just wake up one day and you get 10 million PPE sets or 10 million testing kits, and it's a continual learning process. The governor has built an incredible team that's really trying to understand the problem at hand. And I'm going to break this down for you. There's very, very interesting lessons learned along the way here. The first push was to get testing kits. And so we started to get those. It wasn't like there was a warehouse with 11 million testing kits for an unknown virus. And so we had to quickly navigate the private sector and figure out how to get these kits. And then once we started to get them and distribute them, what we realized was it wasn't just the kits that were the big issue. It was the time it took to get a test result back. And so now we're working with private sector labs, and also new private sector technology is showing up that allows us to test in just a mere minutes. And so, there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. I'm proud of the governor's plan, but I'm proud of the way they're asking questions and paying attention to the right people to get this plan continually rolled out.
One bit of information that came out from the governor's press conference yesterday, which kind of surprised me. There's a lot of pressure from the Republican delegation, especially Congress, all 11. The state Republican members in Congress signed a letter on Tuesday urging Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to change the primary date, which is set for May 19th. But yesterday, the governor says he lacks the power to delay that primary. Who has the power if it's going to be delayed? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so look, we've been asked a couple times that question, and the answer has been pretty consistent in that we've been laser focused on the health and well-being of 159 counties all across the state in dealing with a global pandemic. We believe that the Legislative Council's opinion sits very clearly that the Secretary of State has the authority to do that. We'll support his decision either way, but we're going to stay focused on the health and well-being of 159 counties right now.
And the question's been asked again, this shelter in place takes effect on Friday. The question was, why not today? Why not yesterday? Why wait till Friday?
Well, I think it's important to allow some folks to make the necessary movements and preparations. Look, it isn't like you just walk away from, everything. If you're a small business owner and you're now required to be closed, you got to have a little bit of time. But look, let's think about this. Look, there isn't this shelter in place statewide is not a magic bowl of pixie dust, right? It isn't like all of a sudden the problem gets better. If what makes it get better is good, solid decisions by Georgians, and we've currently been doing those. Millions of Georgians have been making those great decisions. They have been staying out of crowded places. They have been staying 6 feet away. They have been staying close to home. They have been getting carry out or cooking their own meals and not, so it isn't like all of a sudden because of that move, it just makes everything better. It just reinforces the fact that those are absolutely required movements for you to make and decisions to make. And so, I think the importance is allowing some folks to have a little bit of lead time. Look, I've got 3 kids. I know it takes some time to make sure that we've got food in place for them, and schoolwork is continuing to go on, and teachers, and I'm so proud of the stories that show up in my inbox every minute of every day. I'm so proud of the educators and the first responders that are out there putting everything to the side to take care of the task at hand. I'm proud of the doctors and the hospital systems that are really stepping up to the plate and putting their communities first. There's a lot of good stories going on right now in Georgia, and I know it's difficult. I know it's intimidating at times, but we're going to look back at this period of time and know that we became even closer and even better as a state.
We've been blessed to have Blake Tillery on Tuesdays, Steve Meeks on Monday, Bill Werkheiser on Wednesday. Legislative session's been put on hold. We keep asking when they're going back. You have any idea when they will go back? Because there's still a lot of business that needs to be done by the legislature.
Well, you mentioned a great name, Blake Tillery. I like me some Blake Tillery now. He is an incredibly good friend of ours in the Lieutenant Governor's office. He's an incredible senator. He fights hard for y'all down there. And give him a shout-out if he's listening. I think him and Ashley Nicole are celebrating an anniversary today. So make sure that when you guys see them, you pat them on the back. But here's the deal with session coming back. We're focused on the health and well-being of the folks that would be in and around that process, both the General Assembly members and all the supporting cast around that, doorkeepers, security, secretaries, and clerks. So I can't give you an exact idea when we're going to come back. The only thing really technically left that has to be done, legally done, is approve a budget by June 30th. And so we'll have time to get there and make sure that gets squared away. But for now, we're going to make sure we don't put anybody in the crosshairs of harm's way and make sure we make some good decisions as we move forward.
So they don't have to have it done until June 30th. That's something that we have to
so we've got an amended budget already passed, and then the fiscal year starts July 1 for 2021's fiscal year budget. Blake is the vice chair of appropriations, and so, obviously we're working close with him and Senator Jack Hill, who's just doing an amazing job of staying in touch with us and communicating. But think about this from a budget standpoint. And look, this isn't just the state budget conversation. This is every household's budget and every business's budget. There's new stresses and strains because, one, we're going to have, no doubt, a less than expected revenue flow, right? There's going to be less revenue that comes into the state now with the economic slowdown. And then also, every single line item in the budget is going to have a whole new set of pressure on it, just like my household and your household and everybody else's. And so when we come back together to do this budget, it's going to look totally different than what we thought it was going to look like just a few short weeks ago. But, that's the hand that we're all going to be dealt. We're going to do the best we can, and we're going to represent the needs of 11 million Georgians.
Speaking of your household, someone sent me a web page of your son, Ryder, getting real with Ryder. How'd that come about? Seems like he's got some talent.
Oh, gosh, he doesn't stop. He did a campaign ad for us about 18 months ago, and just the whole thing was him. And he did great. Of course, it was probably one of the reasons why we won the election.
How old is Ryder?
He's 9, and he reminds us every day. But when he started getting calls, he's got an agent. He's been on a Nickelodeon show, a NASCAR ad that ran in the Daytona 500, a movie. He doesn't stop. So getting real with Ryder is his own idea, and I think we're actually going to tape another episode later today. He's going to teach his brothers how to play baseball.
And I look forward to that. But again, we stress the social distancing has been in place. We can't stress that enough. As you mentioned, you deal with the health officials every day, you and the governor. So they're saying the peak in Georgia not till about the 23rd of this month. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what the latest modeling shows. And look, it's all a forecast. It's not it's not an exact science. It's a forecast, and it does look like April 23rd, around that period of time, looks to be the peak. And like I said, because of exponential growth, because of the spread, and think about this too, the data. It's really important to understand that the numbers that we're going to look at today. So at 12 o'clock today, DPH is going to put out numbers, new infection rates, hospitalizations, and mortality. And those numbers were essentially baked in 2 weeks ago. Right, the decisions that were made 2 weeks ago are what somebody was infected roughly 2 weeks ago is really the majority of those folks, and that data then isn't presented until now. So decisions being made today, it'll take roughly 2 weeks for it to show up in the data. And so the scientists are telling us April 23rd should be around the peak, and that's going to continue to put stresses and strains on local hospitals and providers.
And we've stressed the Department of Public Health, as you mentioned, they give out those statistics twice a day at 12 noon and 7 p.m. Every time they come on, I look at the answer if, I guess I'm looking, am I doing this correctly? I keep looking at Chatham County and Glenn County, which are a lot bigger counties than Wayne County, and looking to see their numbers and see if they spike. Is that a good figure to be looking at? Or what is the number to look at? Or what is the statistic to look at?
Yeah, so I think we've all kind of become, quasi-PhDs in statistics looking at this in graphs. I mean, I've personally stared at more graphs and spreadsheets trying to figure out trends and data and movements. It's hard, right? Because look, if you look at the size, right, of Fulton County, there's a number. There's it's the most populated county in the state, I believe. But you look at the infection rates and you look at the mortality of just a smaller county like Doherty County. Those numbers outdo Fulton County. So it's all about kind of the local hotspot. And that's really what the governor has spent a lot of time focusing in on. And they've done a very good job mobilizing into when they identify a hotspot. I think there was a couple that popped up in Cartersville and some other spots around the state. They did a really good job of flooding that with resources and locally making sure everybody understood the importance of just backing up. Because look, we know that an overwhelming majority of folks, when they get COVID-19, have mild to medium, mild to medium symptoms, right? They're not requiring hospitalization. They're not requiring ventilators. That's an overwhelming majority of folks. But we do know that folks with comorbidities that are older, they are much more susceptible to suffering, much more severe side effects and issues with this. And so, look, this is about, even if you're not showing signs or symptoms, you could still spread this and not even know you're doing it. And that's really what these hotspots are on the state. So my point to that is, look, pay attention to the statistics, but really I think the best place to find safety and security is to pay attention to social distancing and really keeping yourself out of harm's way and your family.
As you mentioned, the governor's in a tight spot because, as he mentions, he's in charge of the entire state of Georgia. So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to balance. As he mentioned, as of last week, here in Wayne County, we still haven't had a positive test. There's about 60 counties there have not been a positive test. So, I mean, it's like he's doing a balancing act, like on a tightrope.
And look, I applaud the governor for his early recognition of local control. And, look, he does govern 159 counties, and everybody, over the past few weeks, there was, more and more counties having a case that shows up. But it's impossible to go tell an entire region that, hey, you've got to lock down, you can't move, you got to shut down everything, and there not even be a case within 50 miles of your house or your business. And so, but allowing local control to be in place was important. I continue to urge elected officials in every county and city in the state to really lean into good, solid data and facts and ask the professionals the right questions. Don't take your Facebook feed as exact science and make a big decision for thousands of people in your community. Really hone in on those statistics. Talk to DPH. Dr. Toomey is a wealth of knowledge, and the rest of her team, the CDC. So that's my encouragement. But the governor has allowed local control to be in place and let folks make the decisions that they needed to make.
And Governor, you know as well as anybody, the majority of the Georgians, they'll take this advice and they'll do exactly what they're asked to do. But there's always a few that just simply will not follow directions or follow orders. Governor says he's going to use the Georgia State Patrol and other agencies to take appropriate action, ensure full compliance will take place with no exceptions. You didn't disclose what the penalties would be, but do you have any ideas what the penalty would be if somebody doesn't follow the guidelines?
Yeah, I think that's going to be part of the draft that we're going to see today. I know that the governor's team worked overnight on putting the final program in place. Look, my hope is that not a single person in Georgia gets a ticket or has some sort of penalty, because my hope is now the realities of that are some folks are going to get out and push the envelope. That's unfortunate, and certainly there's consequences to doing that. Look, the quicker we get this behind us, the quicker we get to go becoming the technology capital of the East Coast, the quicker we get to continue to grow economically, the quicker rural Georgia gets to continue to rise up and be the shining star to this state. Look, there's a lot of good days in front of us. Let's do the right thing. Let's get there to that spot as quickly as we can so that we can start getting back on track.
And again, stress, these guidelines that they're giving out, they do work. The social distancing has shown that it works. To continue to wash your hands, avoid large crowds. I mean, these things they put in place, they are showing a positive effect.
Absolutely. And what we had, like I said a couple minutes ago, we've got to make sure that we take a mature look at the data, because if we make these moves and tomorrow we wake up and the infection rate continues to grow, we got to understand that it takes about 2 weeks for any decisions to really have it make a difference in the data. And so we've got to just make the steps, trust that we're going to be headed the right way, and then look up and watch this thing start to flatten out. And then soon enough, it'll be in the rearview mirror and we'll get back to normal.
Last time I saw you, you were in Scriven, Georgia. I had talked to some people in Scriven. The mayor, they want to just know, how did you enjoy your trip to Scriven, Georgia?
Man, I love going down there. I'm here as lieutenant governor because that entire area down there decided that they believed in me and my values, and they gave me a shot to be lieutenant governor. So every chance I get to head down your direction, I love doing it. And you know what? I'm saying this. Blake's a good friend, but he's a great leader in that area. You're fortunate to have some really good folks. Bill Wertheiser's a strong leader. Jack Hill is as important as anybody in the Senate with being the appropriations chair. So I love being in that neck of the woods. Good people, and y'all are a good part of Georgia.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, hopefully we'll see you soon. Again, we do appreciate you being here on the show. Butch has some questions he wants to ask.
I've got a couple of questions that we're texting in. Somebody wants to know, the government itself, the elected officials, shut down or back home. But what about the other government agencies up there? Are they working from home? What's going on? Somebody wants to know, is the government completely shut down in Atlanta, or what's going on with the state government?
No, it's operating much like every other business is. If there's an essential employee or interface that has to be in place, they are in the office. But then everybody else is working from home. And managing. I can tell you from the Lieutenant Governor's office, I think we've got a staff of 11 in Atlanta, and we have virtual staff meetings. Everyone's phones are forwarded to their cell phones, and we're just continuing to operate with just like every other business is trying to find a way to operate without being face-to-face.
And Lieutenant Governor Duncan, someone also texted in and said the special session to end or give emergency power to the governor, is there a certain date that y'all have to get back together to extend that, or what is the timetable on that?
You've got some smart listeners that are texting you. The special session, the call for a special session is for April 15th. Okay, so that's the day we come back. Look, I can't, if I'm just putting all the data points on the table, I can't think of a scenario where it's going to make sense for 235 members of the General Assembly and all the supporting cast to show back up to the Capitol in 2 weeks from today. That just doesn't seem like a feasible option. It's been explained to me by all the attorneys, and I had this same exact explanation to me back when the House version of their special session call came over, that we don't have to meet back to get the governor to confirm the governor's emergency powers. They'll just continue to renew as needed if we don't meet on April 15th.
Okay. You began the conversation today here on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show talking about, who's doing what and when and all that kind of stuff, but there wasn't a game plan for anybody to follow on this. The last pandemic we had was just 11 years ago, from 2009 to 2010, with the H1N1 swine flu virus that basically went over a year back when President Obama was in, and thousands and thousands of people were infected with the H1N1 swine flu virus. Thousands died, but it was over a long time period. It wasn't nearly as infectious, and it took almost 12 to 15 months before it kind of cycled through instead of the COVID-19, which is spreading fast. So no one really had a game plan. Everybody's kind of pointing fingers, and I wish they wouldn't do that. You've read reports about how the CDC tried to control everything to begin with and not let satellite offices throughout the country do their lab work, which they are now. You've got the FDA, who said that people are blaming them because of bureaucracy, them wanting to put their stamp of approval on everything, and you know how long it takes the government to do something, so that delayed things. And so I'm getting tired of seeing this, everybody pointing fingers at everybody when there wasn't a game plan. The last one we went through, we didn't have this type of lockdown. We didn't have this type of panic, even though thousands got the H1N1 and thousands died and hundreds of thousands were infected, or millions were infected. So how do you stop that? How do you get that finger pointing to stop and say, hey, let's all work together and and move forward, without saying you're to blame, you're to blame, you're to blame?
Well, every medical professional that I've talked to has really explained this virus as a completely different beast. And you alluded to it. The infection rate is what makes this kind of a one-of-a-kind deal. It so quickly spreads. My kids and I last night were talking about, literally how fast this made a lap around the world. It's crazy. But it's the hand we've been dealt with. Look, in any leadership role, whether you're running a business, whether you're a lead pastor at a church, or you're the lieutenant governor or governor, you're going to have those that disagree with your strategy. I think it's to understand their perspective, but it's to continue to push forward and continue to look for the right things to do. Governor Kemp, I'm proud of the way he has not been, bullied into decisions. He simply gets all the data points, and he makes a measured decision, asking the right questions and inviting the right people into the room. Even if they don't agree with him, he invites them in so that he can understand their perspective. That, to me, is leadership. Look, we're all going to look back in a year. We're going to think about things that we could have done better. We're going to think about things that we did great. And we're going to think about things that next time we'll act differently. But that's just good leadership, and that's learning from life. Certainly we'll have a lot of life lessons to learn here.
We'll definitely have a better game plan next time. Do you know about the time of the day today that the governor is going to release the specifics of his lockdown?
I will, as soon as I hang up on this call and jump on a call with the governor's office.
Well, I guess we better let you go and talk to the governor. But we'll have that information on today for our listeners down here in Southeast Georgia. Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan, our special guest this morning on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show. We appreciate you taking the almost 30 minutes out of your time this morning on this very important morning to talk to the listeners down here. And, of course, we're on the World Wide Web, so people can hear us all over the world, too. Bob, any other final comments for Lieutenant Governor?
I just want to thank you again, Lieutenant Governor, for calling in. Again, a lot of people are calling saying they're going to be on the show and they have to cancel for one reason. There's much going on there. I do appreciate you calling in this morning because I think it's been a very informative show for our listeners. And again, I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Stay strong. This too will pass.
Okay, thank you. All right, Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan, our special guest here on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show, him calling in from Atlanta to give us his input on this crisis situation. And Bob, just very good questions for the Lieutenant Governor this morning. And it's going to be interesting to see what the specifics are today on this lockdown that the governor says will go into place beginning tomorrow.
Right. It goes into tomorrow to at least the 13th. And they could extend that. You just don't know. Like I said, because as he mentioned, we're not expected to see our peak until the 23rd of April, which is, a scary thing. So, and again, you need to stress that just because you have no symptoms right now, you still could be carrying the virus and could be spreading it to other people. So it is asymptomatic. So,
Do we have any idea what's going to happen with the students in school? They've missed some March and April and now May. Will the 2020 class be able to graduate? Will the other classes be able to move on from first grade to second grade, from 9th grade to 10th grade?
I'm sure.
How's all that going to work?
I'm sure that's going to happen. I mean, they waived all that. I mean, schools are closed. Yeah, I mean, schools have been closed. I mean, the governor made that order yesterday. Schools are closed for the remainder of their school year.
They're closed. I just didn't know what they were going to do about all that learning they were supposed to get the last 3 months of the year.
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question.
Okay. I didn't know. And how would you like to be the class of 2020 where you don't have, all the senior week stuff and the prom and the graduation, all that? I just feel for all those seniors out there, class of 2020, not only Wayne County High School, but throughout the nation, both in high schools and colleges.
It's a sad situation. Like I said, the main thing right now is everybody's health.
Yes,
that's the main concern.
Yeah, that is the main concern. And we will keep you updated right here on WIFO 105.5 FM in Jessup, Big Dog Country. National and international news from Fox News Radio, state news from the Georgia News Network, local news and happenings with Bob Morgan, community announcements and updates, all right here on 105.5 FM. And Bob, anything else this morning?
Again, just appreciate Lieutenant Governor calling in. Thought it was very informative.
Have a good day. All right, the world-famous Butch and Bob Show brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply, where the builders buy, located on Northeast Broad Street in downtown Jessup. You got some time on your hand right now. Time to get doing those home projects that you've been putting off. Head on down there and see the folks at Murphy Builder Supply and get those supplies.
The world famous